Hello, my friends of Powerhouse Bakery, my divas and dudes out there. I just have to say, I sure miss getting to see your beautiful faces. I hope you're all well and getting to spend time with family, and just know that you guys are in my prayers. And if you're ever in the area and you want to come by and see me, I'd absolutely love it. Mary Tom, I know I've missed you a couple times. And of course, Judy brings me the most amazing herbs. So thank you too, Miss Judy. Today I wanted to go over some really cool things about plant-based dieting. And I hate the word dieting, but it's kind of a phrase that helps us think through a typical repertoire of what people use and choose to have in their normal eating style. And while the term dieting is kind of passé, the styles of eating are really top of mind, and people are really trying to learn the different options and trying to find that answer to what is healthy, trying to understand what is the best choice for proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. You know that we are really hitting a wide gamut too. We're trying to understand what athletes need, and even those of us that are fighting disease and chronic illness. What does our bodies need to be super healthy? And honestly, the experts are still trying to figure that out. There isn't an easy answer for everybody. But what we do know for sure is that through the millennia, people have done really well eating from the earth, eating close to the earth. And so that's something that I try to teach more and more about. The Western diet has pretty much caused lots of illness. And of course, it's hard to know, is that because of our diet per se, or is it from other extenuating circumstances with our stressful lifestyle and the fact that we perhaps eat highly processed foods, not just the type of food, but how they're processed. So there's a lot of questions that go into that I think are all really important. And so often people have a hard time trying to know who to believe. And so what I always try to tell folks is what's so important is you want to think of getting several resources to understand what the best approach is and what experts you want to really take as someone that has value to you and to your own medical condition. So today I want to go over one of the powerhouse nutrients, which is that beautiful lentil. This is a legume, and it is part of the bean family, but not actually a bean. It is a cousin of the bean. It gets its name because of its interesting little shape, and it's been used for thousands of years for many different cultures as a mainstay of their diet. Sadly, though, Americans don't think of it as a main element of their diet. In fact, when I did a search on Google to try to see what the layperson might find when they look up Google and nutrition information, they're often wondering, is the website or is a Google search going to give you the information that you need that really you can trust about the health of the lentil? And I found some errors. And so it's sad to realize, but very true, that even though it's on Google, it doesn't mean that it's 100% correct. So get yourself a couple of great resources. Those of you that have visited Powerhouse Bakery know that I'm an advocate of a lot of research that is going to back up a statement. And so Colin Campbell, that wrote the China study, is one that I really agree with. The Harvard School of Public Health is another great one. Andrew Weil is another great resource that's been around for 30 years and studying wide spectrum of nutrients and peoples and how their diet affects their overall health in a longitudinal way, not just what's a fad and what's popular right now and you're getting instant results, which, right now we know keto is promising amazing results, and we have some data that talks about the value of very low carb and low sugar diet. But that doesn't mean that's right for everybody. So let's get started. Our beautiful lentils. One thing that I love to talk about is filling your fridge with lots of great starting foods, and the lentil is one of those. We know that the lentil is not only rich in protein and fiber and minerals. I've talked about the importance of phosphorus and manganese and calcium and iron that's part of the lentil. Also, the lentil is a great source of riboflavin and niacin. pantothenic acid, and zinc. So those, and I look at my notes because those are the minerals that sometimes we think of as rich in animal foods, which they are. But lo and behold, the good Lord has given us the lentil. So if you can't afford to eat meat, like in the more remote countries, not the Western culture, they can't afford as much animal product, so they rely on lentils, and lo and behold, they are an amazing, healthy people's group. So I want to show you how to make a base lentil recipe that can go in your fridge and can be modified to be all kinds of wonderful secondary recipes. So the first thing we do, I just bought a nice simple bag of HEB, the typical beige lentil, which is kind of a light green. It's one you're going to find most often. I do also really like the sprouted lentil, which you're going to have to buy at a more specialty store, but they are beautiful. They're a little bit fatter, so notice that these are just a very delicate little disc shape. The ones here on my plate, I've got a couple different colors. This beautiful red lentil is quite a bit smaller than the green one, so you can kind of see them here in different sizes. So that does really lead us to the cooking time. The smaller the bean, the quicker the cooking time. But in general, when you start with this one that you find at HEB, they're going to cook in about 20 to maybe 40 minutes. And it's going to be a very simple recipe. The one bag, so 1 pound, and just enough water to cover your lentils. So that's about right. They're floating on the top. I'm not overflowing the pot with a lot of water, but I don't want the lentils to go dry either. So when I'm cooking them, I want to make sure that I get enough water so that the lentils are pretty well covered. And yes, you can rinse them if you want first, especially if you buy the lentils in like an open bulk, which is less and less common these days, but rinsing them is not a bad idea at all. Every once in a while you can find a stone in there, so all the more reason to rinse them. You do not want to bite down on a stone. But because these come from the earth, there's very good possibility that there can be residue in there, even if they've been triple washed. So once you rinse them, you can drain them, of course, and then put them in your pan. So I've got about a ½ an inch of water on the top of that lentil. Could I go more? Of course. But the trick is I don't want to go too much liquid because it's going to dilute my spices. And so this is where we come with the spices. I'm going to always start lentils with a bay leaf. So this is where my wonderful friend Judy Davis has done such a good job for me. She has a plant that she shares her beautiful leaves of the bay leaf. So I'm going to put a pretty generous amount. I would say 3 to 4 is plenty. You could even do more if you wanted that flavor, but it's a wonderful, earthy, very fresh aroma. When the lentils are completed, their cooking process is completed, you can pull those out, but they're pretty easy. So even if you inadvertently put one into the bowl when you're serving up you or your family, they're pretty easy to pull out. And the whole time that they're in your lentils, they're giving off a wonderful flavor. So we definitely want to add that in. And now we're going to start building our spices. So you know that one of my favorite things to do at Powerhouse Bakery is to do our own spice blends. So I've got the Taco Tango, I've got the quinoa spice, and I've got the PHB adobo, which are all really fun. None of them have salt. So of course, once you add in your basic flavors, don't forget you'll definitely want to add salt. I usually say 1.5 teaspoons per pound of salt. So this is a pound bag. So start with 1.5 teaspoons, and always you can add salt later. So you want to go light at first so you don't inadvertently oversalt. So 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and now we're going to start creating. So the quinoa spice is a blend of oregano, sage, thyme. It has garlic powder. It has a little bit of regular fresh ground pepper and some paprika. And I know that because I've written my little notes here on this jar. But we sell our quinoa spice as well as all of these here at Powerhouse Bakery. But what I really want you to be able to do is do your own spice blends. It's a great way to go. And so if you're not sure what to start with, sure, you could certainly get a spice blend that you can see the ingredients, and that way you can know what that flavor is, and if you like those spices, you can buy them. The other one that I really love is our Taco Tango. So this is a very similar flavor profile that you would get in a taco meat. And this one's going to have ancho chili. It has garlic powder, sweet paprika, chili powder, cumin, chipotle, and oregano. So all of these are going to be in different ratios. But in general, whenever you're building a spice, you want to start with a primary spice, and then you want to do your add-ons. So let me kind of show you how I've built these spices. So for the quinoa spice, I want it to be kind of an all-purpose. So I'm going to start with the Italian spices. That would be oregano. Always try to get your spices organic and fresh. If you can, get them in small containers of just an organic one spice, and that way you can make sure they're going to have good aroma. So the oregano comes in a rubbed form or in a flake form. So either one, but the main thing is you want to try to get it organic and get it fresh. The other one that comes in a rubbed form or flaked is sage. It's a very interesting texture. So if you buy it in the powder form, I really discourage that because it has so much surface area that all the aroma really evaporates or degrades quickly. So if you can get the rubbed form of both of these, that's a really good way to start. Of course, the leaves are also fine, and you could even use your own mortar and pestle and grind them yourself or rub them. It's a great way to go, but rubbed is very nice. So the other one in the Italian spice family is thyme. So oregano, sage, and thyme are the bases of my quinoa spice. So in these, I'm doing a 2-to-1 ratio. So the sage and thyme is twice as much as the oregano. And that's because oregano is pretty strong. So if I did 1 teaspoon of oregano, I would do 2 teaspoons of the sage and thyme, and that gives me my 2-to-1 ratio. Now, garlic pretty much goes, I think, in everything beautifully. So I definitely want to include garlic, and you kind of decide, do you want that flavor to pop or do you want it to be kind of an underlying flavor? And in quinoa spice, I don't want it to be super powerful. So I'm going to do half as much of my garlic. So if I had 1 teaspoon of oregano, I would have half a teaspoon of garlic. So you see how I work my ratios. That's how I've kind of developed these. And then I have paprika, which gives us some wonderful color. And of course, if it's smoked paprika or sweet, it's going to be a soft, sublime, smoky flavor. If we do hot paprika, it's going to give you a little bit of punch. And so in this one, I'm doing a 1-to-1 ratio, so it's the same as the oregano. And then lastly, I put in a little bit of pepper. And that would be a half, so just like the garlic. So when you follow this recipe, now you're kind of working in the recipe of ratios. If you start with your base, so the 1 teaspoon oregano, and then twice as much of the sage and thyme, and then half as much garlic and pepper, it's an easy way to do your own mix and match in your own little cup. So now let me show you what my quinoa spice looks like. So it's going to have a little bit of red color, but it's also going to have some wonderful aroma of the thyme and the sage and a little bit. See how pretty that is? So a little bit of that red from the paprika. A little bit of garlic. Whenever you can, get garlic that is roasted and not salt. So you don't want garlic salt, you want to get garlic powder or just roasted. So in my 1 pound, I'm going to use 1 tablespoon of my quinoa spice. I'll put that little bit extra in there. So a tablespoon, well-rounded, is pretty much the same as an actual tablespoon measurer. So if you have a favorite spoon, you can always use that one to measure if you don't have your actual measuring teaspoons. So what I've done here is 4 of the bay leaves, 1.5 teaspoon of salt, and then I did my quinoa spice. So this is what I call level 1. Level 1 because I just did my base flavors to get it started. This can transition after I've cooked it by adding other flavors in. So if you've ever taken one of my classes, you know that we do layers of flavor. So that means you get lots of different components on the palette when you're having fun with your mix and match. So when you open your fridge and you have a base quinoa, now you can add some citrus, you could add some peppers, you could add some tarragon, which is a nice extra flavor. Remember, we want one that will sometimes pop, and adding a extra flavor at the very end of cooking means that it doesn't soften it nearly as much, and that's a great way to go. And of course, we could add our beautiful mighty seeds. This is the chia, hemp hearts, and flax. And I would not want to add this in when I'm cooking it. I'd want to add it in on the finished product. So when I think of stages, I'm going to have stage 1 where I want all those spices to cook down and really become integral in the legume or this lentil. That after they cook and cool, then I can put on my secondary flavors, which would be some citrus, maybe a dash of an extra herb right on top, and then of course some add-ins like veggies, like peppers and spinach. The other one is, I've got one more to add in, is our wonderful nuts and seeds. So again, this would be something we'd add in at the end, and we would absolutely want to have that as a fresh, nice touch as we're finished with the cooking process. So the same idea with quinoa, but the nice thing about lentils is they cook so quickly. And even if I had too much water, the worst case scenario, I'll just drain them. With quinoa or rice, it really does affect the cooking of the grain if you inadvertently get too much water. Tight-fitting lid, if you see that you're getting too much water and the lentils are almost cooked, take off the lid, turn up the heat, and let that water steam off, and then you don't have to worry about losing the concentration of your wonderful herbs. Okay, so this is going to go onto the skillet, onto the stove, and we're going to cook up our lentils. And what I've done here is I've cooked 1 pound of lentils, and I added 4 cups of water. Again, it's not a super strict recipe, because the reality is you want to make sure that your lentils don't go dry. So notice when I tilt it, I still got a little bit of moisture in there, which is just what I want. And so when I stir, look how they're starting to be much softer now. They've absorbed the water, which is what we love. And those beautiful bay leaves are still intact. So if I want to take those out, if I want to have it a little bit softer flavor, I can certainly take them out now. But this is when you have this beautiful base. Now we're going to add some more goodies to turn it into a beautiful lentil stew. I've got some cooked beets that I'm going to add in. And the beets are going to have carrots and lots of herbs. This is where all those wonderful Indian spices come into play. I did extra paprika, and so now that's going to add into my stew. Absolutely gorgeous. And because both ingredients have already cooked a bit, we could just pull this out and eat it right away, or we could use it for, again, 1 layer at a time. But this is going to be a beautiful stew all by itself. I'm going to continue adding a few more veggies, and I'm going to do that second layer of flavor. At this stage, though, we want to add a little bit of sesame oil. Now, at this stage, you could use olive oil too if you prefer, but the oil is always going to be a great element of flavor. So I did about 1.5 tablespoons of sesame oil. It's starting to smell amazing. So if I wanted it to be a little bit more moist, I could certainly add tomato sauce or tomato base, but this is so beautiful. Here come the rest of the potatoes. So again, pre-roasted. If I wanted to cook the potatoes in with the lentils, you'd have to be careful because it would take a lot longer for them to cook than the lentils themselves. So it's usually better just to go ahead and put them in at the end and cook them separately so you know you've got the right texture. These are the beautiful the beautiful beets that I've used. You can use bright red ones, or you can use these fabulous yellow ones. And they do keep their color when you've cooked them in the lentils. And so keep that in mind if you can find these, or if you're lucky enough to have somebody that grows them, or maybe even you have your own garden and you're growing some beets. These are so pretty to use. So now my final add-in, if I wanted to add a little more liquid, I could, but right now I'm going to add in some fresh greens. Fresh greens to the lentil stew. Now I'm adding my extra nutrients. So remember with lentils, they are non-heme iron, which means that the iron that lentils offer is a little tougher to absorb. So we got to make sure we add extra vitamin C to help absorb that, as well as beta carotene, and even the dark green leafies are going to have enough iron to help really push that non-heme iron into the cells. So this is going to be absolutely gorgeous. My final touch is some lemon. 1 lemon would be fabulous for this. If you wanted to use orange or tangerine, that would be really cool too. I just took out the seeds. If you wanted to make sure you didn't get seeds, you could certainly squeeze it into a side bowl. But you know, you can kind of grab them out too when you see them pop in there. But the citrus really adds an extra layer of flavor. So at the end of the cooking is when we sample and make sure we may or may not want to add in more salt. But right now it's got lots of fabulous flavors in it. I'm going to do 1 more squeeze of lemon. Tomato goes great with all lentils. Again, that's that vitamin C and the lycopene that would really help to bolster the iron, as well as the antioxidants that come with this beautiful complex carb. So don't hesitate to use some tomato base in your stew. There you go. That is a gorgeous lentil stew. It's got potatoes, it's got carrots, it has some eggplant from my ratatouille, and sage. Curry it up, as well as that quinoa spice. So I hope you love it. So now we are ready to plate up our beautiful lentil stew. So when I cooked it, I decided I wanted to leave it a little bit on the dry side so I could add in some more flavors and keep it, versatile. So what I'm going to do is first give it a little bit more liquid. So I just have a basic tomato sauce that I'm going to add in, and it's just going to add richness and creaminess. I could cook this down and add more spices if I wanted to. There's actually a great jarred curry sauce that I also love. And again, there's nothing wrong with having those kinds of cheats, if you will, in your fridge that just give it a little bit more options. So here I'm ready to dish up my beautiful lentil stew. I love to put beets in here, like I mentioned, but sometimes just the tomato and other veggies is just beautiful for that. See how pretty that looks? And then as the topper, I'm going to add a little side of some peppers for the side. Another way I like to add a little bit of crunch is putting in the mighty seeds at serving time. Also, we always have to have our fresh herbs. So if I put a few here on the top, I can really make those leaves look so elegant and pretty. So there you have it. So pretty. Now, if you wanted to add rice to the side of the dish, you could absolutely do that. This again is about a ½ cup serving. So when we think about the nutrition facts, this is going to be loaded with protein. So you're looking at 12 grams of protein, about 110 calories, 37 grams of carbs, and still under 10 grams of fat. And remember, I cooked this with the sesame oil, and I also had sauteed the peppers, and even the potatoes had some added oil. So just be careful that you don't add too much in all those different foods, but it's a wonderful way to get a perfect balanced meal of protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Here are some fun little extra add-ins. I had roasted some carrots. I could put those on the top. And that way you're sneaking in so many extra veggies, your family will not even notice how many more they're doing. When you're plating up, just make sure you have some pretty fresh and some cooked down vegetables, but the fresh just adds so much to it. Maybe the last thing I could add in is the tarragon. So remember, I started with that one. I love the tarragon because it has such a fresh flavor, such a nice aroma when you pop that in there. So again, this could be an extra little topper. Okay, now don't forget, I did use the nutritional yeast also. That's one of my favorite ingredients. So when you see all these recipes, you're going to have a couple of new items that I want you to get to look for and see if it's something that would be of value. In previous lentil recipes that I've done for you, adding the nutritional yeast gives it a little bit of a cheesy flavor, and of course it's a great source of B12. anytime we're trying to improve our anemia or potential anemia, adding the iron from the lentils and other legumes is super important. And then the spinach that I turned in with the lentil stew is also really important to add in the extra vitamin C. And then we topped it off with that tomato. So all these ways to really help your diet, maximize your nutrition with your plant-based protein and iron-rich sources. So bon appetit, my friends.